Hello and welcome to WFL Video Rulebook Section 3, Gameplay on Offense. I am one of the leadership team here in the WFL Winuvas, and welcome to our video rulebook series where we go through and discuss all the little aspects of the rulebook to hopefully give you a better understanding, other than reading it, how we view it and operate it. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it, and here we go with, as I've been talking about with every section of the video rulebook series, our wonderful logo, but more importantly our motto. It's not about the W or the L, it's about the WFL. Essentially, we feel very strongly about community here, making sure that everybody, no matter what their win-loss record is valued and appreciated here. If you're a guy that values wins and losses more than you value community and chit-chatting and camaraderie with others, then you probably won't be a long-standing member of the WFL, and that's just a fact of our culture, and that's the way we operate and do things. So with that in mind, the first thing, and you'll see this especially in the gameplay areas as I kind of try and focus in on it, ignorance is no defense. It's something I heard a long time ago when I was in high school, way back in the before times. One of my coaches during one of his classes said ignorance is no defense, and it's always kind of stuck with me because if you don't know, you don't care. I don't expect everybody to memorize every section of the rule book, but as your defense for violating a rule, I don't know is not an acceptable answer, or I didn't know. That's not an acceptable answer in any sort of merit of where you're facing something where you're being accused of something. I didn't know doesn't mean that it's not acceptable. Now, with gameplay, we do have rules in place here that are effective for most 95 to 98% of cases. But there are times where Madden throws us a glitch or throws us something off our toes where we have to kind of make surprise announcements on things. Be aware that any sort of rulings we have on gameplay or rules, whether it's offensive related, defensive related, things of that nature, if we say there's a gameplay issue out there and we put it out there as an announcement and it's not officially in the rules, it's still part of the rules because we have final say over what any gameplay issue is, and anything we say is a gameplay issue can overwrite anything in this rule book. So if we decide during the cycle that due to the fact that zone coverage is overpowered, the 70-30 rule doesn't work anymore for zone coverage, if we change that, then even if it doesn't change in the rule book, we changed it. So be aware that any announcements we make on gameplay changes or rules around things that are temporary fixes, yes, they might be temporary, but they are just as hard, fast rules as these rules in the rule book that have kind of proven over the course of time to be here. So pay attention to any announcements, especially coming from leadership around rules and around gameplay stuff, because if we say there's an issue out there and we want to curtail it and nip it in the bud, and you do it, you have violated rules, even if they aren't written down in this rule book, okay? So first things first, it was available in Section 2 of the video rulebook, but I'm going to mention it in every section going forward, short of GM rules. WFL is a no-switch league. Now, I know some leagues do full no-switch, and that's fine and dandy. We are not a full no-switch league. Our switching, as far as when you can't switch, is when a pass is in the air. Once the process of the pass is completed, whether it's an interception, an incompleted pass, a completed pass, you are allowed to switch as you need to make tackles, to avoid block, or to avoid players, things of that nature. This includes using button catching on offense to manipulate whether you do a possession catch, an aggressive catch, a run after the catch. Any of those things, if they're spotted, those are illegal. And usually they're fairly easy to spot unless you're really good with your timing on offense. Because once you hit the button, you switch to the receiver, and that's switching. So switching is not allowed. On defense, if you are using the safety or the cornerback that's in position to make a play, make a play. But if you're not the user, safety, or cornerback that's back there, you are not allowed to switch to that player to make a play. That's one of the hardest things that new guys coming in have to adjust to if they're not used to a no-switch league. It takes a couple of games of adjustment. Be prepared if you're new to the no switching concept. Be prepared to get some warnings early on. We're usually pretty lenient, especially with new guys coming in. But after a couple of games, your habit should be broken, or if not, you will start seeing suspension of players. On run plays, though, if it's a run play, switching is allowed. So you can swap to a guy that's got a better angle, better pursuit angle, better edge presence. If you're needing to catch the edge, you can switch on run plays. You can also switch after the pass is completed to a player that's in a better position or a better angle to make a tackle on the play if you're on defense. So be aware, switching is allowed. The only spot where switching isn't allowed is when the pass is officially in the air. Once that ball hits air, no switching on either side is allowed. Okay? 70-30 rule. The following must be between a 70-30 split. That's 70% one way, 30% the other way. At most, pass-run ratio. And we do take score into account when we look at this. For example, in blowout games, you expect the team that is blowing the other one out to run the ball more, so they might be more heavy run beyond that 70% ratio. And for teams that are behind by a lot of scores, you'll see a lot of passing. However, in close ball games, especially low-scoring ball games, you should be within 70-30 within reason most of the time, if not all the time. And that is on a per-game basis. So be aware that we judge those week by week on a per-game basis, and if we see violations, you'll get warnings, you'll get suspensions, things of that nature. A rule that was in place, taken out the last season of last cycle, and is coming back, the 80-20 rule. I took it out thinking I would simplify the rule book, and I made it worse. So I'm bringing it back. The 80-20 rule is the halfback, your primary halfback can get no more than 80% of carries in a game. Okay? That's total. So basically, if you carry the ball 20 times a game, you can have your halfback, your primary halfback, carry the ball 16 out of 20 times. That is essentially 80%. If he carries more than 16 times in a game out of 20, again with the 20 in the number in case here, if he carries more than 16 times in a 20 carry game, then that's illegal. Okay? Your backup halfback or your fullback or your quarterback must get the remainder of carries, and they can get no more than 80% of the carries in the game. Your primary halfback, because in the real life NFL, nobody is a workhorse anymore and gets 100% of the carries. It's just not how the NFL works nowadays. So you see a lot of your third down backs and your quarterbacks, especially in like Lamar Jackson type offenses, they get some carries as well. So we have some allowance to a certain extent to allow your other players to get carries. Just be aware that the primary halfback can get no more than 80% of the carries out of the 100% of total carries. And kneel downs don't count. So if your quarterback does a kneel down, that doesn't count toward the total number of rushes in a game. So if you're trying to kind of curtail the 80-20 rule by kneeling at the end of games, that's not going to work. Running with Integrity 2.0. You see the guidelines there, which I actually have a video I will link down in the description about running with integrity. It's a little bit of an older video, but I don't need to redo a video that's pretty well done already. Essentially, it talks about the different types of run plays that you have and what we view as running with integrity, meaning following your blockers, not making a unrealistic arcade-like cut. I know Barry Sanders was a real-life person, but in today's NFL, there is no Barry Sanders, so we don't want to see video game-like cuts where you basically are running one direction and you basically just completely reverse and go the opposite direction. 9 times out of 10, or 9.9 times out of 10, you will not see that in the NFL unless it's like the last play of the game, desperation type of thing. No zigzag left stick running. Basically, that means don't bob and weave with the left stick to try and avoid pursuit angles. That's AI manipulation at its finest and at its most basic. So try and avoid that where you can. Try and basically make a directional choice and stick to it unless you make some type of right stick maneuver or some type of modifier to make your cut using the left stick as well. This is one that's one of my personal pet peeves. The no horizontal running or horizontal and backwards, which is even worse. Don't ever do it. Don't ever do it. The only exception you have to running horizontal to the line of scrimmage is if the play is a touch pass or a jet sweep. That is the only time I should see any horizontal running, and as soon as you see a lane open upfield, you should take it. Okay? I do not want to see, and for the most part, our guys that we currently have in WFL are pretty good about it, if not darn near perfect about it. But the horizontal is just AI manipulation to avoid pursuit angles and make the computer take bad pursuit angles. Horizontal and backwards is even more egregious. So don't ever do it. The only time with Madden 24 coming on the horizon and with us having training camps coming into play, the only time I should ever see horizontal and backwards running is if you are streaming your training camp and you're doing the drill with the running backs where you have to avoid tackles down the field for as long as possible. In that case only is where I'll tolerate horizontal backwards, because that's an arcade mechanic. But in an actual game, simulation football, no. And I promise you, as a gameplay guru, if I see it, I'm going to bring it to the Players Association, and I'm going to make them make a ruling on it. Don't do it. Not on kickoffs, not on punts, not on any sort of run play, not anytime you're running down the field to avoid contact. Juke steps, stop steps, that's fine, but as far as suddenly taking off and going the opposite direction or backwards in the opposite direction, no. I will bust that 20 times out of 10. Excuse me. The following plays and play types are banned in the WFL. So this is one I get a little flack on, Madden coach suggestion usage on offense. The reason I ban coach suggestion is to kind of help with other rules we have in play, which are things about excessive use as far as concepts go, as far as inside-outside runs are concerned. Because the thing about coach suggestion, excuse me again, is that with coach suggestion, it essentially only calls what's game planned in your playbook. And especially if you use a custom playbook, you will have very few plays set up game plan with stars attached to it in certain situations. So your suggestions will be quite limited. Now, if you use a stock playbook, you have more selection, but it's still limited in scope. And so to avoid that limitation in scope and to force you to kind of look at your entire playbook, we do ban coach suggestion. However, if you look at the top tabs on your playbook when you're on offense or on defense for that matter, there are things like concept, there are things like game plan, there are things like player. Those types of things where that game plan around a specific player, a specific concept, those aren't banned. So if you have a particular concept you're trying to run, if you're trying to get it to a particular player, if you're trying to run out of a particular set, all those things are allowed. So coach suggestion being banned is not really as much of a handcuff as it used to be when it was only coach suggestion or formation. Now with other options available, especially game plan, so if you're running a game plan, say inside run or maybe short pass, it'll bring up all your plays that are of that variety that are in your game plan that you get bonuses for. You can use those options in lieu of coach suggestion. And it provides you a much wider option of plays than coach suggestion will. That's why coach suggestion is banned, is to help you from exceeding those other rules that are in place to prevent you from running the same plays over and over again. Quarterback sneak play. The reason this is banned is because it's an automatic yard. It is an automatic yard, and in goal-to-go situations, especially on the 1 yard line, it's an instant touchdown. There's hardly any way to stop it short of manipulating the AI yourself. And if you're manipulating the AI, you're cheating as well. It's an AI play. It's not easy. It's not hard to run, but it's very hard to stop effectively. So we ban it. We don't ban the fullback dive. So that's a play you can use for an easy couple of yards. We don't ban inside runs. The only run play we ban is the specific play we ban is a quarterback sneak. We also ban play actions on 3rd or 4th down and 8+ yards. And the reason for that's real simple. Even with a quarterback with poor play action ratings, they will always, always, always fake at least one of the CPU defenders. And to be realistic, on third down and 8+ yards, you're not running the ball. You're not. You're throwing the ball to get the first down if you're in that situation. So no play action on third and fourth down because of the AI manipulation issue. Quarterback throws outside the numbers. This is one that's a legacy one. It's still in effect, though. Basically, when you roll outside the numbers, typically your corners and safeties crash down to help contain the quarterback. And when they do that, they leave their man wide open. So it tends to create an issue where you can roll out, draw the defender in, and then throw over the top of them. And yes, I am aware that happens in real life sometimes, where a player has to, a real player has to make a split-second decision whether to keep their man or go to the quarterback. And in most cases, if this were a realistic, true-to-life simulation game, I would be okay with that. But this is not. It's a video game. And it's a poorly coded video game, as we all know. So 9 times out of 10 when the quarterback rolls out, the corners and safeties will draw up. It's just a fact. They don't play their responsibilities like they should. They abandon them completely almost all the time, and that leaves players wide open. So when you roll outside the numbers, you have to either throw it away or you take off with the quarterback. Those are your options at that point. Throw away is clicking the right stick in to throw the ball away. Or you can take off with the quarterback. It depends on what's going on. Okay? You cannot throw it to a player once you roll outside the numbers. And then the hardest one for most new guys to get behind, because it's always been rewarded in the past, no quarterback dropbacks over 12 yards from the line of scrimmage. Be aware in shotgun sets, you start 7 yards back. So that means your dropback is even less. Underneath center, obviously, you're going to drop back 3, 5, 7 step drop, and then you can retreat a little bit from there. But be aware we take into account line of scrimmage, and then we count off of that. So if you do drop back more than 12 yards, and the reason for that's real simple, there's not a lot of quarterbacks. In fact, there's probably a handful currently in NFL that can drop back that far from the line of scrimmage and still throw well. But in Madden, any quarterback can still throw accurately at that point. There are certain fundamentals in footwork that we're trying to respect with this rule that aren't respected in the video game, because it's a video game. So be aware of that coming in. If you're one of those guys that likes to drop back from pressure and then fire a dime, you're not going to be successful here, because we're not going to allow that here. Offensive snap rules. This is one that's another one of my pet peeves. Offense must give 3 to 5 seconds to allow showing of play art if you're on defense and streaming, and adjustments on defense. Folks, and you know what, actually, I want to come back on camera. I like to come on camera for some of these ones that I have either strong opinions of or pet peeves on, and I didn't do that earlier with the horizontal running, but I'm going to do it here. On offense, you have all the advantages. You can audible whenever you want. You can hot route when you can want. You can put a man in motion and snap during that. We don't currently have rules in place for that. Okay? But realistically, in a video game setting, you have all the control. You decide when to snap the ball. You have to give some advantage to the defense and give them an opportunity to counter what you're doing. If you're up against the play clock, that's one thing. That's a totally different argument. But with our setup, especially with the clock rundown, you have a limited amount of time to do these adjustments and make these adjustments before you snap the ball. Give the defense some opportunity to react to that. Okay? With that being said, we're going to get back into the regular rest of the rules. If you make sort of audibles or hot routes on offense, you must give at least a 2 to 3 second time frame to allow the defense to adjust. Again, let that chess match occur out unless the play clock you're up against the play clock. That's the only time frame where and by up against the play clock, I don't mean, oh, I had 5 seconds to snap. I mean like you're at 1 on the play clock, then snap it even if you haven't given 2 to 3 seconds. But if you're making adjustments that late in the ball anyway, or that late in the clock anyway, there's probably going to be something said to you anyway. But I will say in the last 2 minutes of either half, this rule doesn't apply. Okay? I know it says Rule 5 on there. It should say Rule 6. In fact, guess what? I'm going to correct it now because it used to be Rule 5. Now it's Rule 6. So there you go. Rule 6 does not apply. But do give the defense time to stream their play art, to show their play art. And the reason we do that is to make sure we have responsibilities, which I'll talk about in that video. The following things will not be done more than twice per play. Hot routes on offense. So meaning if you hot route a player more than twice, or two different players. If you hot route a third player, you're illegal. Audibles on offense. If you change the play, that counts. Now, on this rule, I want to clarify, this is one of the ones that's harder to adjudicate and rule over. The way I personally do it, just to give you my philosophy as one of the gameplay gurus, is anytime I see the quarterback bark, if I hear or see the quarterback motion or move, or I see the little icon below the user, if I see it like pop up, because it shows you when the quarterback makes an adjustment, I count that as a hot route or an audible, even if you're doing a line shift, like if you're trying to say max protect, or if you're trying to say shift right, shift left for blocking. That to me, I'm counting as a hot route or an audible. So keep that in mind if you're a guy that likes to adjust their protection. Bear in mind, I'm going to be looking at that and seeing that that's a hot route, okay? So you can have an argument potentially there, but do be aware that that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for quarterback cadence there, okay? All right, let's scroll down to excessive concepts. Let's get that focused on the screen. So excessive concepts, this means no more than 25% of plays called per game. Generally speaking, when we use the term excessive, whether it's on offense or defense, it's no more than 1 out of every 4 plays. If it has to be something more specific, it's not listed usually as excessive. It's listed as whatever it is. You'll see some of that examples further down. So one type of offensive concept, verticals, slants, Omaha, Miami, dagger, crossing routes, etc. We log that when we do gameplay review. So we have the capabilities now. It's a painstaking process to set up the spreadsheet that we use, but we basically have every single play in the entirety of Madden, just about. I'd say probably 95% of plays. The only ones we don't have in our current setup are playbook specific plays. We have the ability to log all of those, okay? And every one of them ties to a certain concept that we have that we log as well. So be aware, we can log most all of this stuff. So if you run certain things, like if you live by crossing routes and that's all you run, we will see it and we will know it. So be aware that no more than 25% of your plays called per game can be of one type of offensive concept. And that includes, to a certain extent, we kind of observe the inside-outside, stretch run, those types of concepts. But the running game is a lot more flexible for us than the passing game. This is mainly around the passing game. Screen passes versus total passes. So that means if you throw, and I'm going to use the number 20 because it's a nice even number. If you throw 20 passes in a game, no more than 4 of them, or 5 of them I should say, 5 of them, can be screens. That is plenty enough screens in the game out of 20 passes. And on screen passes, a little sub rule, they must go to the target or be thrown away, which means if you call a halfback screen, it has to go to the halfback or nobody. If you call a fullback screen, it has to go to the fullback only. If you call a tight end screen, it has to go to the tight end only. If you throw a wide receiver screen, I realize on some routes they can have multiple wide receivers on a screen route, on a bubble screen. You have to throw it to one of the receivers on the screen route. Okay? There is none of this BS of throwing it downfield to a player that's wide open because everybody's playing the defenders up on the screen and he was open. No. You call the screen, throw a screen. If you can't throw the screen, throw it away. Okay? It's as simple as that. All right, now with that being said, play action passes versus total passes. If you run play action, once again, using the nice number of 20, you can have no more than 5 passes be play action. That's 25% of 20 passes, okay? And that is easy to calculate. We calculate that as well using our play call sheet. Anytime you call a play action, it logs as a play action, as in addition to the other concepts it covers. So we log those things. Read options versus total plays on offense. Now, read options can obviously be either a run or a pass. We're not as specific with those, but we do actually call those read options by read option inside run, read option outside run, read option screen pass, read option pass. Excuse me. So we do log read options. So you cannot have more than 25% of your total plays be read option. That's total plays. So that's a little bit different. So out of, say, 40 plays on offense total, whether they're pass or run, 40 plays on offense total, no more than 8 of them, because 8 is 25% of 40. No, 10, excuse me. 10 is 25% of 40. 10 plays out of 40 can be read option. That is plenty enough to give yourself a wide variety of fooling the player, read, pass, read, run, read, pass, that kind of thing. And then run pass options. So RPOs specifically versus total plays on offense. So not only do we log the read option, but we also log the read or run pass option. So the RPO specific plays, where you can actually have it be a run or be a pass in one shot. Read options are typically run plays. I think I was thinking about read option when I was talking about it earlier. So read options are specifically inside, outside runs. Run pass options, RPOs, are either RPO screen, RPO pass, RPO inside run, RPO outside run. That's how we log them on our play call sheet. But you can have no more, again, using that number 40, you can have no more than 10 plays be run pass options. We log those and we will bust you for it if you beat that violation. Hot routed plays versus total passes on offense. Again, go back to my previous talk. Anytime I see the quarterback bark, I count it. If I count up more hot routed plays than you should have, you will be logged for a violation. So be aware of that. Basically, this encourages you to run the play as it's called and not draw up plays in the sand. That's not how NFL works. Yes, you can make adjustments based upon mismatches and things you spot in the coverage. That's strategic. But drawing up your own plays in the sand, that's where we get into more Madden arcade BS. And that won't be allowed here. Okay? The following will not be more than 40% per game. This is a fairly new rule. Quarterback runs versus total runs. So if your quarterback is a running quarterback, we do not want to prohibit you from using him as the weapon he is. However, we do want to limit the times you use him and not make it a AI manipulation issue. So quarterback runs versus total runs. Now, we do not count quarterback kneel downs as part of that, but we do count any sort of scramble as part of that. So anytime where it logs the quarterback with a rush attempt, that's a run. So if you drop back to pass and everybody's covered and you take off, that's perfectly fine. But be aware that you cannot do that every single time you drop back to pass, because pretty soon you're going to be in violation of our 40% rule for quarterback runs. The following will be no more than 50% a game, and this is becoming more and more a legacy-based rule. But outside runs versus total runs. Essentially, inside runs have no limit. You can have 100% of your runs be inside the tackles. But an outside run specifically is a run that takes you outside the tackle box and into tight end territory. So be aware that anytime you run outside the tackles, that counts as an outside run. And we do have certain play types, like off tackle, for example, potentially can go outside or inside, but like things like stretch plays are typically this way. Obviously, your jet sweeps and sweep plays are going to be in that nature, or that play call where that's considered an outside run. I'll be honest, we've had very little violations of this rule over the last couple of years it's been in. So like I said, it's kind of a legacy rule. But just to prevent guys from running nothing but outside runs so they think they can just do horizontal runs to the outside, that's why that rule's in here. Fourth down rules. Oh boy, fourth down rules. You can go for it if one of the following apply. One of these things has to be in play for you to legally go for it. 4th and 2 or less inside your opponent's territory, meaning you're on their side of the 50. If you are at midfield on the dot, I don't care if it's 4th and inches, punt. Period. Is it realistic? Not entirely, but this rule has to be strict because otherwise everybody would go for it on 4th down, and that's not realistic either. So at some point we have to draw some line in the sand, and this is our line in the sand. If you're inside your opponent's 50, and I mean inside of it, 4th and 2 or less, you can choose to go for it. If you are down by 20 or more points, you can go for it no matter what the down and distance is and no matter where you are on the field. I know it doesn't specifically state that, but be aware that any distance means anywhere on the field if you're losing by 20 or more points at the time you do it. If you're losing in the 4th quarter, once again, you can go for it wherever you are, whatever the down and whatever the distance is, I should say, not down. It's 4th down. That's why we're talking about this. But any distance, anywhere, when you're losing in the 4th quarter. If you're in overtime, any distance. So obviously, overtime, you're tied. Either team can go for it no matter where they are on the field on 4th down. If you're in one of those first 4 scenarios, you can perform a fake punt or a fake field goal. However, and I haven't had this problem yet crop up, but I want to talk about it in the video rule book because it allows me to kind of expand upon what's written. Be aware that if you do this more than, say, maybe twice in a season, we're probably going to start to have issues. I've not seen anyone maybe one time do it, and I'm thinking the game I'm thinking of in Madden 23 was actually a CPU game I played where they did it, and it completely made me angry. But be aware that while it's in there as a rule, it can be something that we might have to tweak with. So with that being said, that kind of ends our 4th down rules. Again, the fake punt field goal, like I said, I don't see many people doing it because it is kind of chancy to throw with your kicker or with your punter. But if we see it happen a lot, even if it is legal, we may start to limit it. But again, I don't see many guys doing it. I think they'd rather put their offense out there on the field rather than trick. I think it's truly a trick play type of scenario. But it is available to do if you choose to do it. So just be aware of that. No huddle allowances. Okay, so we do allow for no huddle, but with some restrictions. No huddle, whether you're winning or losing by 9 or less points, you're allowed to no huddle 1 drive per half. So this means that if you say you get down, you score a touchdown, so you're up 7-0 early, okay, and you get the ball back real quick, you get a 3 and out. You get started and you get the guys you get your defense. You get the defense in a bad setup, and you want to keep them going. You can push the tempo as long as it's 1 drive, and you're winning or losing by 9 or less points. If you are down by 10 or more points, you can run no huddle as many times as you want, but be aware. And this is the part I have to kind of stress because, again, this is a way for me to kind of expand upon what's in the rule book and explain the design of the rule book. If you get down 10 or more points and you use no huddle to get back to where it's a game, where you're in that winning or losing by 9 or less points, the winning or losing by 9 or less points rule takes effect and counts previous drives. Example, second half. You're down by 17 points. You use no huddle to get back into it, and you get down to 10. You get the ball back miraculously. You use no huddle again to get back down the field and get another touchdown. You're down by 3. Okay, you're down by 3. You stop them again, and you get the ball back. You can't do no huddle a third time because now you're under the rules of you're winning or losing by 9 or less points, which means you're only allowed 1 drive per half. You've already exceeded it to get to this point, so you must run standard offense for the rest of the half unless you get down by 10 plus points again, okay? This is a rule that hasn't come into huge effect, because most guys don't run no huddle for the most part unless it's like late in the game and they're trying to get back into it, which this rule allows for. But do be aware that anytime you run no huddle, you must give the defense a couple seconds. It says 5 on there, but I'm willing to say 3 to 5 seconds to at least get set up and get their players into a certain position. Okay? Chew clock guidelines. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Chew clock guidelines. That's really hard to say. They're back here. They're from section 1 of the rule book, but I put them back in here just to have offense have an idea of what they can do. Again, these are guidelines. These are not hard, fast rules. These are not things you have to do, but these are things that are suggested to be done, especially if you've got backups in. Go ahead and put your backups in at this point of the game. Go ahead and use that chew clock mechanic, which, by the way, I do believe is either click the left stick in on offense or the right stick in, and you'll see at the bottom it'll go from no change to tempo, which is no huddle, to chew clock, which basically runs the clock down automatically to 10 seconds as you're breaking the huddle. So by the time you get set up, you're pretty much at 5 or 4 seconds anyway. You can't make a whole lot of adjustments. That's how you chew clock if you're not aware. That's the easy way. Yes, you can get lined up and let the clock tick down, but it's much faster and more efficient to just click the stick in and go to chew clock mode. Those are the rules as far as chew clock goes. That's when you can acceptably do it. Anytime outside those time frames is going to be kind of iffy and can be reported as a rules violation, but it's kind of a gray area rules violation because it's not really a rule, it's guidelines. Any sort of gameplay issue you have, though, this is getting back to the most important part of this section as I highlight over something I didn't want to. Reporting gameplay issues. The first rule, you must wait 12 hours. It is required. And the reason for that's real simple. And I follow this rule too, because there are countless games. I say countless. There are many games where I get aggravated and frustrated with Madden and with my performance in particular because I'm not a good user. And sometimes that spews into, I feel like this guy did something to cheat. Okay? I'm not perfect. I have these thoughts. But the 12-hour cooldown period is in there and in place for that reason and that reason alone. Because what I do 9 times out of 10 when I go back and watch the film of a game I feel like I was cheated on, I'm wrong. And I'm glad I'm wrong. But that's why the cooldown period's there. Is to give you time to kind of go away from the game, get away, focus, do something else with your life, do something productive. And when you come back to it and you rewatch it, if you choose to rewatch it with that cool down eyes, the not in the moment eyes. And when you're not in the moment, you will see more often than not, you lost because you suck, or you did something wrong and they took advantage of it, or you committed a turnover you shouldn't have and they did what they had to do to score and get the W. There are times where it is a rules violation, but most of the time, if you obey that cooldown period, you will find more often than not that you were just in the moment. You were mad that you didn't win. You wanted to take it out on somebody, so you took it out on your opponent. And you thought it was something, some kind of issue. Okay, so cool down, go sit, go do something else. Don't worry about it for a minimum of 12 hours. Then come back, look at it, and think about it, and say, was it a rules violation, or was I just in the moment and mad that I lost? However, if you look at it or you think about it and you're like, no, I think it was a rules violation, I think something was broken, the link to the gameplay form can be found here. It can also be found in the defensive gameplay section. You click that, it will take you to a rules violation form. It's a little Google form you fill out. It's pretty simple to fill out. You say who you are, who you played, what type of violation, and if possible, provide timestamps on the video of where the violation occurred. So that way, me and the gameplay folks that watch these tapes don't have to watch the whole thing. If you don't provide timestamps, we do watch the whole thing. And I will tell you, because this tends to make some people upset, when I watch a rules violation game, I watch both sides. Because just because you reported a violation does not mean you are free from violations yourself. And it's something I do just to keep everybody honest. And guess what? Sometimes I find that not only did you report a gameplay violation as the reporting person, but you also committed a violation. And that tends to make people really angry. But be aware that when you report something, I watch both sides for that type of violation. So do not cast a stone if you have also been somebody that's done what you're reporting, because I will catch it if I watch it, and I will punish it because it's a rules violation. Doesn't matter who did it, who reported it. If I see it, I call it, just like a referee would. If a referee sees a penalty, they call it, regardless of whether they've called 10 penalties on one team and one on the other team. If you're violating, you're violating. And we go through, if you've watched section 1 of the rule book, you can see our process. We go through the panel, they review it, they decide warnings or suspensions, they decide length of suspensions, they decide who's suspended. I'm not going to go into detail there, or here I should say. You can look at the details on section 1 video rulebook if you want a more detailed breakdown of the process. Okay, but that's our section 3.1, which is offense. You can catch all our videos from conduct to league settings and scheduling to defense and special teams gameplay and GM rules. All links to all those other sections of the video rulebook will be down below. And if you happen across this video on the internet, there will also be a link to join our Discord server. If this interests you at all, you can link to our Discord server. You can pop in there, fill out an application, join our league, and if it's accepted, you will then either be provided a team if you have one open, or you will be put on the waiting list where you can join the crew. You can kind of talk, get to know the community a little bit before you actually jump in as a user and as an owner. Thank you so much for your time, whether you happen across this video across the internet or if you're coming here from the WFL. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your time here today. I'm Winuvas, one of the leadership team here in the WFL, and that has been section 3.1 of our video rulebook. Thanks for your time.